going to make apple tart tatin. Now what I've got is 150 grams of caster sugar, 100 grams of unsalted butter, a pack of puff pastry ready-made, and a kilo, probably more than a kilo actually, of apples. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt the butter in a pan. I've got a cast iron skillet here. If you've got a tart tatin dish, that's great. I haven't, I'm just using this. So this is going to melt in the pan, and when it foams, that's when I'm going to add the butter, the sugar rather. Okay, now I've added the sugar. I'm going to let that melt. As soon as that has melted and it's foaming, I'm going to add the apples. I've done just over a kilo here, which is probably slightly more than I need for this pan, but it's best to do too many than too few. So here the sugar's melting. You can see it in the butter, incorporating into the butter. I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to add the apples. I'm going to add them in a circular pattern. I'm going to add the hump side of the apple down. Now it's important that you put them in quite nicely, quite neatly. Don't worry if they're discoloured slightly. Unfortunately that's what happens with apples. I did put a little bit of lemon juice on them, but you don't want too much because you don't want it to taint the apples. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit because it's going a bit browner than I'd like it to straight away. Because eventually what's going to happen is all of this will go brown. I'll take this off the heat and then I'm going to let it rest for about 10 minutes before I put the pastry on. But yeah, this is basically the pattern that you're going to see on the plate. So it's really important that you get it as tidy as you possibly can. Don't be too rough with the old apples. So I'll leave that. There's quite a few left over. Probably, really, maybe only needs about half a kilo. But like I say, better to do too many than too few. See that's nicely browning. I'm just going to move that around a bit. You can always move those back. Put it to the edge of the pan. Okay, brown enough for me that. I'm going to take this off the heat and I'm going to let it sit for 10 minutes. Okay. Right, so I've rolled the pastry out. It's quite thin. I would say it's probably only a couple of millimetres thick. And I'm actually using the lid for this pan as a template to draw around. You want to make it slightly larger than the space you're trying to cover because you need to tuck it in like a blanket around the apples. I'm not going to put this down on the pastry because it'll cut it out because it's so heavy. So I'm just holding it as well as I can, drawing a rough circle. It doesn't have to be neat. So there, what I'm going to do now, and I don't know whether I mentioned that the oven should be preheated at 200 degrees for a normal oven or 180 for a fan. If I didn't mention that, I do apologise. So here's the lid, whatever you want to call it, the pastry bit. I'm just going to roll that onto my rolling pin and I'm going to roll it off over my apples. There's no need to glaze this because this is going to be the base. It's kind of like a pineapple upside down cake. It's going to be the base. Now I'm tucking that in and fingers crossed, you never know, that this is going to come out in about 20 to 30 minutes when the top's golden brown. And I'm going to turn it over and it's going to be a tart tatin. Right, so here's the moment of truth. I've taken it out of the oven. It took about 25 minutes. It looks okay. The pastry seems to have risen nicely. You don't have to use puff pastry. I like puff pastry, so that's why I use it. I think some recipes call for Danish pastry. I don't know, short crust pastry. But I use puff pastry. Now, what I've got is a plate that just fits that. So I could have a little bit of leakage. I might not. I don't know. I'm going to turn this over really, really carefully because this pan is ever so hot. Whoa. Here goes. looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is just kind of rearrange it so that the apples are more on there, on the outside, which is perfectly fine. This happens. Gently. It's all cooked really nicely through. I'm pleased with this. Nice. Now, I'm going to let that rest. You don't want to serve it really, really hot. It's a shame I lost some of that syrup, but never mind. You don't want to serve it really, really hot. So I'm going to let it cool down a bit, and then I'm going to serve a slice per guest with a little bit of vanilla ice cream and a dusting of powder. So I'll show you that after this is cooled down. So here we have Tarte Tatin with vanilla ice cream.